Then we're going. And we're live. Aha. Hello, folks. Pardon me. Just popping on a wee quick moment early just to make sure everything's okay. As usual. Let's just turn that up a wee bit, I think. There we go. That's a bit better. Excuse me. So if anybody's out there in the meantime, say hello. And we'll get going at 10 o'clock. But it looks like I've got green for my sound machine. Picture seems to be okay. There's 10 o'clock, folks. So I'll say hello. I'm Doc Sloan. Welcome to my science fiction station, also known as the Doghouse. And tonight we've got chapter 18 of our Children of Dune book club, which is a very short little chapter, but a very important one, I think. And quite an interesting little one, to be honest with you. Pardon me. So anybody who's joining us for the first time, this will be page 122 in this edition of Children of Dune, and it begins with the epigraph, The Life of a Single Human. Pardon me, as always, I'm just wheezing a bit before we get started. Getting some books out of the way. Interestingly enough today, pardon me, we finished our first notebook on Children of Dune. So as I'm sure you know, we fill in these books as we go, filling them pretty much with absolutely everything that we find. So tonight's chapter 18, will take us to the end of our notebook to begin the next one of our Children of Dune book club, volume 2. Pardon me. So that means, don't know if you can see them behind me, folks, but there they are, just behind Judge Dredd here. We've got 4 full notebooks for Dune, 2 for Dune Messiah. I'm guessing we're going to end up with 3 or 4 for Children of Dune, but it's just in terms of milestones. We'll be finishing a notebook today, which is always a bit of fun because I get to set up my next notebook and just try to sort of create a wee bit of continuity of them, get a doodle on the front page, that kind of thing, so that we're set up for next week. Well, the wee little thing, fun, I suppose. Pardon me. So yeah, just a wee bit of housekeeping. Just saw that watching the episode, a fair bit of interference on the live broadcast. Again, it happens now and then when we tend to get a bit of dodgy weather, etc. But we had a bit of freezing fog last week. So wee bit of housekeeping just before we get started. Cynthia sent me a wee email, and it was regarding a couple of comments about chapter 16. So I thought I'd read it to you, and I actually thought one of these comments I was kind of face palming myself whenever I heard it, but it's quite interesting. So here we go. This is from Cynthia saying, "Hi Doc, finally catching up to the Children of Dune sessions. I have a couple of comments about chapter 16. So first of all, regarding the confusing sentence about the Ixian and Tylaxu factories, my Berkeley text reads the same as yours. Products permitted the Ixian Tylaxu factories could not relieve the pressure." So this is this kind of sentence in chapter 16 that's either missing something or, but it just does not make sense. What Cynthia's saying here is, while I agree that the wording is dense opaque, it does make sense in context. There we go. So a differing opinion than mine. Alia is clutching the edge of the spy hole as it represents her hold on imperial power. She senses its fragility as she surveys the key players. One of the unstable players is the forbidden seepage of technological development from the frontier. She tried countering that by allowing some products from Ixian and Tylaxu factories into the main areas of the Imperium, via Chom, I assume, but that strategy is not working. There's still a deleterious net effect, a pressure on the center of power from this new technology that seeps in from the edges, similar perhaps to the way that the green on Arrakis seeps across the sands like green pseudopods. There's that. I love that word, pseudopod. What tech might Alia be thinking about? Herbert doesn't give us much help. Here are the most obvious possibilities. 1, the false Ixian mask that the preacher wears on Solusus Secundus. It appears to pass muster in House Carino, whose inhabitants would be familiar with the latest technology, so it must closely resemble a known Ixian device or rumored descriptions of such a device. Also, if someone from the deep desert on Dune can afford or use such a device, Ixian tech must be fairly widespread. yet these products aren't enough to balance out incoming novelties. 2. Another possibility is the experiment on sandworms that Farad'n wants to take part in. Perhaps frontier technology is being used to assist these experiments in finding a way to break the Atreides Arrakis spice monopoly. We don't know how much Alia hears about such experiments, but she must know attempts are being made. This would clearly threaten her hold on power. 3. Might be a reach here, but the taboo that the Bene Gesserit have against slowing the aging process is so pronounced in this part of the book, chapter 15, that I wonder if it points to a fear of new technology from the Imperial fringes that would accomplish the same thing. Remember the Bene Gesserit's suspicion or distrust of face dancer technology in Dune Messiah. Was Herbert already starting to think about the honored matres who would then return after the scattering? Pardon me. So on the surface, Alia is thinking about technological progress as she contemplates the fate of her regency, the progress of humanity, prescience, time, and power. I also wonder if there's another personal struggle being represented here. I believe we can hear the Baron in many of her thoughts in this chapter. Now, this is the interesting bit, I think. Well, it's all interesting. But, for example, calling her brother a vessel of magnificence sounds less like a sisterly comment than a sensual remark by the Baron ogling over Paul's body as he did years ago. And that was the bit I kind of went with the vessel of magnificence being, when I was reading this bit, before we get back to just Cynthia's final points, I kind of went with it as being a bit like the moment in Hamlet, I think, where Hamlet compares Claudius to his father, Hamlet Senior, if you like. That it was that kind of thing. But this is my face palm. I absolutely agree with this. The vessel of magnificence sounds less like a sisterly comment than a sensual remark by the Baron ogling over Paul's body as he did years ago. Alia's perception of having a fragile grip on political power could also refer to her increasingly fragile grip on her own sexuality. Notice her vocabulary. She contrasts the forbidden with the permitted. She's feeling the forbidden acts thoughts of the Baron seep in from the outer edge of her awareness, putting pressure on her core self. She's tried to push back with permitted acts. Her Gola husband, Duncan, is literally a product of Ixian and Thylaxu factories. Pardon me, but it hasn't relieved the pressure of the Baron's demands. She's losing the battle and perhaps losing the ability to think well of herself, as Irulan astutely noted. Thanks and take care. And that's Cynthia's thoughts there, just in relation to chapter 16. So some really good points there. But especially that one about the point where Alia calls Paul a vessel of magnificence. Very, very much so. I just didn't think about it at the time, but it makes much more sense that that's the Baron seeping out, if you like, and it's a good point to make. So there we go. And I must actually make a wee note of that in my notebook as well. But it was an interesting thing, the vessel of magnificence. Yes, indeed. So chapter 18, folks, and there's Julian Thompson saying, Hiya, Julian, how you doing? Hope you're keeping well, sir. I'm going to get in touch with you soon. I'm always saying this, but we're always getting swamped every week, but we're very close to getting some free time. So hopefully I will be in touch pretty soon. Let me see. I hope you're keeping well. If anybody else is out there, say hi. There's Cynthia. Hi, Doc. Hi, all. Hi, Cynthia. Hope you don't mind, as usual. I was just having a wee read at your email in relation to chapter 16. Some great points there, I thought. But yeah, it just didn't occur to me that was... And I think it was because the Baron was popping out, if you see what I mean, in that chapter. We were actually kind of seeing his personality there. Pardon me. But it didn't occur to me that it's such an odd comment, doesn't it? That's probably the Baron kind of bleeding through. So there we go. So hope you are all keeping well, folks. It's another very cold and wet and quite misty day here today. So we've got a short little, short little chapter here, but there's plenty in it. Just to sort of run before we hit the epigraph, just to point out, so the last line in the previous chapter is we're going to run straight along with this, and it's quite an important statement, was that presently Leto passed him, this is Stilgar, and glancing back said, "Have you noticed still how beautiful the young women are this year?" So that's how our previous chapter 17 ends, and it's going to be quite important. So just to point that out, we're going to get a few different things repeated and emphasized within this chapter. One is very much the beautiful nature of the young Fremen. The other, I suppose, is that Muad'Dib has changed all that. And the other thing, I suppose, that we get recurring within this chapter is Stilgar stumbling, physically stumbling as he goes along. But this chapter pretty much involves Stilgar and Leto, but it's pretty much all Stilgar except for the very last moment. And what we get to have a look at, I suppose, within this chapter is kind of a comparison of old Fremen values, perhaps, against the new Fremen. The changes of the old Arrakis to the new Arrakis, the old empire to the new empire, this kind of thing. And in some ways, I suppose it's a look at tradition and ritual, things like that. Where those core ideas come from within Frank Herbert's book is, and there's going to be a couple of things in it, is Lord Raglan. Again, we do like to bring Lord Raglan up every now and then. I know a lot of people like to focus on the Campbellian kind of monomyth with Frank Herbert, but I think much more of importance is well, or at least very least equal importance, but I would say possibly more, is Lord Raglan's ritualistic steps that the hero goes through, because they're very much mapped onto Paul Atreides. As it's a wee book that we talk about quite a lot, that we love and adore. It's not a perfect book in any sense of, or shape of the word, but it's for those of us who are into studying the hero or reading about heroes, it's quite an important book. I think if you're interested in heroes, it should definitely be in your library or on your reading list. Lord Raglan's The Hero, A Study of Myth, Drama and Tradition, I believe is the full title. I might be slightly wrong on the last bit. But I don't think it's a particularly hard book to get a hold on, excuse me a second. Oh, there was something I wanted to bring out here tonight, actually. I'll grab it while I'm here. Oh, there we go. It's a funny thing. It's, sometimes you look about your house and, where's this book and where's that book? It's a book I always know where it is. There you go, The Hero. Very quickly, I've talked about it quite a bit here. The Hero, A Study in Tradition, Myth and Drama by Lord Raglan, published by London Watts & Co. First published in 1936. So I think it's a pretty well-regarded, well-known book. I suppose mine's an old copy out of from Dorset County Library. And it's an interesting sort of, a more modern kind of look at some of the ideas that were being presented, towards the end of the 19th century and into the early 20th century. But another one that goes well with this, I suppose, is Carlyle's Hero and Hero Worship. And there we go. Now, let me just quickly dig this out a wee second. I just wanted to look something up. There's something about something to do with movement. Actually, I'll have a wee look at that later, folks. But anyway, let's get cracking. Let's have a wee read. Quite a lengthy sort of little epigraph here. The life of a single human as the life of a family or an entire people persists as memory. My people must come to see this as part of their maturing process. They are people as organism, and in this persistent memory, they store more and more experiences in a subliminal reservoir. Humankind hopes to call upon this material if it is needed for a changing universe, but much that is stored can be lost in the chance play of accident. Oh, sorry, here, hang on a wee second. In that chance play of accident, which we call fate. Apologies. Uh, Much may not be integrated into evolutionary relationships and thus may not be evaluated and keyed into activity by those ongoing environmental changes which inflict themselves upon flesh. The species can forget. This is the special value of the Kwisatz Haderach, which the Bene Gesserits never suspected. The Kwisatz Haderach cannot forget. And this is from the Book of Leto after Hark al-Ada. After Farad'n. I wonder why it's always after Hark al-Ada. Must have a look at that. It's literally around the last page, isn't it, or something? Oh, well, maybe it's after the breaking of the habit, which is what Hark al-Ada means, according to Leto. So there's our epigraph. The life of a single human as the life of a family or an entire people persists as memory. My people must come to see this as part of the maturing process. So there's something about weird here that's going on, almost what I would call oxymoronic or paradoxical. So the life of an individual person, what we're being told, as the life of a family, which is a group, or an entire people, which is a group, persists as memory. My people must come to see this as part of their maturing process. So I think this is to do with other memory. They are people as organism. Now that's the oxymoronic, but people as organism is an oxymoron. Paradoxical statement. They are people as organism, and in this persistent memory, they store more and more experiences in a subliminal reservoir. So the reason why it's an oxymoron, if you like, if we have a look, and again, the life of a single human, an individual, we're talking about in terms of family and people. And now we're talking about a people as an organism, which I suppose is almost a dichotomy, if you like, juxtaposition of that. But if we look at the definition of an organism, there's the dictionary definition, is an individual or life form. If I go to Wikipedia just quickly, an organism is any living thing that functions as an individual. And it goes on to say such a definition raises more problems than it solves, not least because the concept of an individual is also difficult. I always went with it, you can't be divided. That is, a single thing that can't be divided. So technically an organism is a single thing, if you see what I mean. And I think you can see that juxtaposition of the life of a single into these groups of either a family or entire people, but it persists as a memory. So this is our genetic memory, if you like, the idea of race memory. And what we get the sense of here then is that that this should be called upon when we're in need, but that much that is stored can be lost, and a chance play or accident, which we call fate. So it's just that regardless of the memory, things can be lost, people can be lost, this kind of thing. Much may not be integrated into evolutionary relationships and thus may not be evaluated and keyed into activity by those ongoing environmental changes which inflict themselves upon flesh. The species can forget. So the Kwisatz Haderach cannot forget. I suppose it's interesting in some ways if you look at it. It's a bit like what happens if we lose certain individuals. For example, in war, who knows what sort of individuals are killed during wartime? That during a peace might have brought something, to the party, to the human race, if you like. It's the same thing with books and things like that we lose things. People destroy things for all sorts of reasons. As time goes by, we were chatting about Aeschylus the other week, about we've got 7 of his plays left, out of close to about 80 or so. It's the same with a number of the Greek and Roman writers. We've got stuff, but because they wrote a lot, we actually know what's missing, if you like. And sometimes I suppose our knowledge of history can be improved by discovering new things. but yeah, the things that we lose, it's a very interesting thing to look at. If you like, there are large events within human history that knock us back, arguably, probably close to about 1,000 years each time they happen. And they can be little things. There's Sean saying, "Good evening, Doc." Hi, Sean. How you doing? Thanks very much for joining us. We're just getting cracking with the epigraph here. So the species can forget, but the Kwisatz Haderach cannot forget. And it's interesting, I suppose. What do we lose? And it's a bit like when we lose an individual. We carry on. That person lives on. In the memories of those, if you like, if a lot of people think this way, in the memories of those who knew them, tell their stories and so on. But at the same point, does then that person kind of, whenever you run out of people who knew that person, pardon me, that person's fully gone, But it made me sort of think. Sometimes I think about the wee things that we've lost here, and I know, for example, that when my grandmother passed, my grandmother used to make great pancakes. Um, and we lost that recipe. If you see what I mean, because same sort of thing with my mum. My mum made great pastry and all sorts of things, and I learned to cook kind of from her and my granny as well. But and my dad, he was great at he had a particular hand at omelets. And that was the interesting thing, is that I did talk to him about his recipe for omelets, and kind of was able to preserve that knowledge, if you like, if that makes sense. But as things are lost, we've talked a few times about the Greeks losing the ability to read or write, the Greek Dark Ages, for about 400 years. Pardon me. And how things come about again. So the species can forget. Yeah, we lose things, and how we preserve them. And I suppose one of the greatest examples of that, in terms of human culture, is what we call the Renaissance. Is a great example of what we lost, that we were absolutely lucky to get it back again, and then how quickly we were able to move forward with that knowledge. The Renaissance, when we think about it, is quite an incredible thing. So there we go. So the young women of Arrakis, that's what this is all about. And not really. But let's get going with the chapter, folks. And as always, anybody's got any questions or comments, fire away. Let me know. Now, quick puff. Fluids, right. Okay. So Stilgar could not explain it, but he found Leto's casual observation profoundly disturbing. It ground through his awareness all the way back across the sand to Sietch Tabr, taking precedence over everything else Leto had said out there on the Ascendant. Indeed, the young women of Arrakis were very beautiful that year, and the young men too. So this is our first. I'll kind of point out, but this is mentioned a number of times. We get things repeated or brought up again several times within this chapter. So that's the first time we hear mention of this. And this is the question that, that Leto kind of, have you noticed still about the young women of Iraq at the end of the previous chapter? So they're very beautiful this year. What's that all that about? And it's an interesting thing, the way that this question gets into Stilgar's head, if you see what I mean. So indeed, yeah, the young women of Arrakis were very beautiful that year, and the young men too. Their faces glowed serenely with water richness. Their eyes looked outward and far. And that's quite important, that wee bit here. Just the outward look, the fact that they look outward and far. A little bit about vision in this chapter, I suppose, but also looking inwards, looking outward, that kind of thing. And it's kind of a not to stretch the point much, but it actually, the whole idea of looking inward and looking outward, if you like, is and this book is in the 70s, isn't it? kind of reminded me on that little conflict going on within science fiction itself, if you like. At the time, the idea of the new wave and so on, and very much that the idea of the new wave is about looking inward, isn't it? Inner space as opposed to outer space, this kind of thing. Just got me thinking about it a wee bit, something I must have a wee chat about sometime. So their faces glow serenely. Their water richness, by the way, and I thought that was also interesting, because normally in the Dune world, whenever we hear someone described in those terms, they're water fat. Does that make, as opposed to water rich? And it's interesting, I suppose, fatness sometimes been associated with wealth over the years. But not that they're water fat. It's a nice way of describing them. They're beautiful, serenely beautiful. Their faces glowed serenely with water richness, not water fatness. Their eyes looked outward and far. They exposed their features often without any pretense of still suit masks and the snaking lines of catch tubes. Frequently, they did not even wear still suits in the open, preferring the new garments which, as they moved, offered flickering suggestions of the lithe young bodies beneath. And I've written that next that sexual for that kind of thing. So this planet, where I suppose in a funny way it's a bit interesting with snaking lines, but it's a bit like they're sharing the traditional, how would you put it, the traditional skin, if you like, of the Fremen, the second skin being the still suit. But they're wearing garments that are suggestive, that show the exposed part of the bodies, this kind of thing. It's probably I had a kind of I wrote down the word "for" there with a double meaning. Is it for? For would be the smell of the young Fremen, I often thought. So it must be a wonderful experience for them to not pong, to be not wearing clothes covered in their own urine, etc. This kind of thing. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about the still suit sometimes, I think. But they're not wearing the masks. They're not wearing tubes. They're not in any way attempting to preserve their water. They're water rich. And that these new garments, flickering, the new garments, as we're told, new garments, new Fremen, new clothing, new skins, perhaps, offered flickering suggestions of the lithe young bodies beneath. So we got a contrast here. Such human body, human beauty, human body. Apologies, tongue twisting there. Such human beauty was set off against the new beauty of the landscape. By contrast with the old Arrakis, the eye could be spellbound by its collision with a tiny clump of green twigs growing among red-brown rocks. So we've got a bit of green here and there, a bit of colour. As much as we have the new Fremen, we have a new Arrakis as well. So we're being told their beauty is being set off against the new beauty of the landscape. And in contrast, we have the old Arrakis. You would be fixated if you just, oh, look, there's a bit of green over there. It would absolutely transfix you to that. It would be so rare that you would notice it. And this is, I've got some wee doodles in this. I'll just show them to you actually very quickly. But there's my mud. There's the little twigs. And we're going to have, so these changes, I suppose, we're going to talk about mud bricks now. And the old siege warrens of the cave metropolis culture, complete with elaborate seals and moisture traps at every entrance, were giving way to open villages built often of mud bricks. Mud bricks. So there we go. I've got just to show you a couple of things, I've got my mud bricks there. And this is kind of an interesting thing. And I've done a wee bit of maths on this, actually, a wee bit of mathematics. I'm not too sure what you think about it, but let's have a wee look. And then I'll quickly check up on your comments, folks. So Stilgar's thoughts here are, why did I want the village destroyed? Stilgar wondered. And he stumbled as he walked. And that's the first time he stumbles here. He's going to stumble 3 times. He knew himself to be of a dying breed. Old Fremen gasped in wonder at the prodigality of their planet. They're wasteful. Water gasped in wonder at the waste, I suppose. Water wasted into the air far for no more than its ability to mold building bricks. The water for us now here we go. This is an interesting wee bit. The water for a single one family dwelling would keep an entire siege alive for a year. The new buildings even had transparent windows to let in the sun's heat and to desiccate their bodies within. Such windows opened outward. New Fremen within their mud homes could look out upon their landscape. They no longer were enclosed and huddling in a siege. Where the new vision moved, there also moved the imagination. Stilgar could feel this. The new vision joined Fremen to the rest of the Imperial universe, conditioned them to unbounded space. Once they'd been tied to water-poor Arrakis by their enslavement to its bitter necessities, they'd not shared that open-mindedness which conditioned inhabitants on most planets of the Imperium. Now, I'll just stop there for a wee second. I jumped a wee bit further ahead than I wanted to, but I'll just quickly check your comments, folks. Pardon me. Cynthia saying your example of remembering lost knowledge in the Renaissance and then leaping forward quickly might point to a flaw in the Kwisatz Haderach. It's a good point. No ability to remember, making the old new again. I've actually thought about this sometimes, Cynthia, as well. That as much as that there's things that hold us back, and Christianity, for example, has done a whopping good job of holding mankind back by at least 1,000 years. But in all honesty, sometimes I actually wonder as much as you think, oh, we could be all on Mars or something like that by now, but is it necessary? Is it a necessity that we should have things that hold us back a bit, if you see what I mean? Especially when looking at the technology in the world today, where the change is becoming exponential. It's people are struggling to keep up with it. It's an interesting thing. Herbert is all about the beauty of the new, says Julian. In terms of lost memory, reservoir word for it, Sayadina, or the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother work as direct memory banks. It is awful. We also see the beginnings of the Museum Fremen, a sad people. Yeah, I'm going to have a wee comment on that here. This is where I'll bring in Northern Ireland, actually, into our influence on the Fremen, if you like. Yes, the beginnings of that's exactly right. This is the beginnings of the Museum Fremen. Julian says, I discussed this chapter with my professor of French 19th century decadence. What decadence really means. Very good. Decadence is one of those words, I don't know. Hedonism, Epicureanism, there's some, go for it, decadent, to be decadent. So Julian agreed regarding the new. Paul lost his ability to see anything new. Leto, the Emperor, basically enshrines it in his breeding program with the scattering and the no genes. And there's that's R.P. Dorcas saying modern genre fiction doesn't have enough laser tigers. No, it doesn't. I'm going to agree with you there. I always want, am I pronounced? It's probably laser tigers or something, isn't it? But it does kind of sound, is it like laser tigers? But yes, I agree. It's a pity we don't actually see that kind of continuity with some of the animals, I think, in Dune. Things like that. I suppose we do with things like chair dogs and stuff, I've been thinking about modern fiction a bit, actually. I think I don't know if it's one of those things I talk about a wee bit is books that aren't considered science fiction by people. And the one that people have told me, I'm happy to talk about this one. The one book that people most often tell me is not a science fiction book is 1984. which is just ridiculous. But there's a flip side to that, which is authors who write science fiction who don't want you to call it science fiction. It's part of what Frank Herbert would talk about, the perception of science fiction being in the gutter. In the gutter is Frank Herbert's phrase, by the way. But if I just thought there's a perfect example of that kind of thing is that the last two books, this year's winner of the Booker Prize and last year's winner of the Booker Prize, excuse me, are both what you would call science fiction books. But if you look at the press and the descriptions around them, they're doing their damnedest not to call them science fiction, to the point where they'll go, it has elements of science fiction. So I still think there's a level of snobbery around poor old science fiction as a genre, but at the same time, I also agree with her, not enough laser tigers. All sorts of things in sci-fi, you know. But yeah, sorry, Earl, you got me going there a wee second. Just made me think. But yeah, very quickly, I don't know what you think about this. We've had a kind of oxymoronic kind of paradox with the whole people as organisms, single individual as a people, this kind of thing at the start. But I just wanted to point out what Herbert says here. I just want to focus on it for a wee second about these mud bricks. So the point he makes is, as much as we see that Albert says the moisture traps of the siege, the cave metropolis culture are giving way to open villages built often of mud bricks. What's wrong with that? I hear you say. So here's the wee bit: water wasted, and what we're talking about the prodigality of the planet, about the wastefulness. Pardon me. Water wasted into the air for no more than its ability to mold building bricks. So this is the bit I had a problem with. The water for a single one-family dwelling would keep an entire siege alive for a year. Pardon me. So I kind of did some stuff on this. If you have a wee look, just to show you at the bottom what's going on here, is I've done some maths comparing a one-family single dwelling to the siege. As you can see, I'll just quickly read you what I did. So I've gone with the basis that a siege is between, and when the Atreides arrive, they think it's 10,000 people. When they go, I think it's double that, isn't it? And siege to about 20,000. But I went with, okay, let's just go from 10 to 20,000 people. The amount of water to make the bricks for one house is enough for drinking water at the very minimum for 10 to 20,000 people for a whole year. And I went, that's got to be a load of hoo-ha. So I did a bit of maths. The average woman, I'm told, needs about 2.7 litres per day. The average man about 3.7. Whole hoo-ha about who's agreeing with those. So I just went with, I used to think it was 4 litres. I went with 3.5 litres for the average human, whether they're male or female. I'm not worried about being an upper bound, if you like. Multiply that by 10,000 or by 20,000 gives us 35,000 to 75,000 litres of water per siege per day. So if we run the bottom figure, that comes out at 12,775,000 litres per year. That's the bottom figure. The top figure would be 25,550,000 litres per year. There's no way on this on this Earth or on Arrakis that's how much water that it would be required to make some bricks to build a single family dwelling. And this is Stilgar's thoughts here. It's hyperbolic, and I don't think it's correct at all. To be honest with you, and I've seen people. I understand the process of how to make mud bricks. The only thing I can I wrote evaporation, loss, that kind of thing, or is it just hyperbolic? I don't know, but I didn't buy it for a minute, I suppose is all I was saying, So we get the new Fremen, their new vision, we get their new buildings. um, that have transparent windows you can see in, that let in the sun's heat and desiccate their bodies within. Such windows opened outward. Again, wasteful, letting the moisture out. Within their mud homes, New Fremen could look out upon their landscape. No longer were enclosed and huddling in a siege. Where the new vision moved, there also moved the imagination. And I suppose that we're going to get a bit about the discussion of freedom of movement and freedom of thought, this kind of thing. And that Stilgar could feel this. The new vision joined Fremen to the rest of the Imperial universe, conditioned them to unbounded space. Once they'd been tied to water-poor Arrakis by their enslavement to its bitter necessities, they'd not shared that open-mindedness which conditioned inhabitants on most planets of the Imperium. So, in other words, this new vision of theirs, this new lifestyle, the way they're able to live, has let them see that, oh, here, we're part of a big, big universe. And I wonder what's out there other than this place, And so they start thinking, whereas prior to that, their life in siege, is enclosed, is encapsulated, is rigid, I suppose. And even their clothing, if to a certain extent, has become a thing of necessity, if you see what I mean. So they'd not had that open-mindedness, they'd not shared that open-mindedness which conditioned inhabitants on most planets of the Imperium. Stilgar could see the changes contrasting with his own doubts and fears. In the old days, it had been a rare Fremen who even considered the possibility that he might leave Arrakis to begin a new life in one of the water-rich worlds. They'd not even been permitted the dream of escape. I think that's kind of interesting. I'll catch up with your comments here a wee second, folks. I've written next that it kind of makes me think of the language in 1984, oddly enough, which I'm mentioning again. Not even permitted the dream of escape. The life that the Fremen have constructed for themselves out of necessity is so rigid, I suppose, so inward looking, if you like, so conservative. And pretty extreme at the same time, Let's see, just any comments. Colleges and cannibals say a nice plant. It's always been there. It's doing all right. Well, I move it about a bit, but what is it, a spider plant? I don't know. It's about twice the size of it. It was not doing too well. It was my dad's plant and it was dying, so it's doing all right actually. It's growing quite well, but it's very skinny trunk, if you like, but it's doing okay. Yeah, I like it. We've got a few wee cactuses and stuff about it in here. I don't know if you can see this one. There you go. There's my knobbly cactus. I have to be careful what I say on here sometimes. But thank you very much, colleges. P. Dorcasta says Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson present Ultimate Dune Extreme Trilogy #1, the Dog Chairs versus Laser Tigers War. Dog chairs. Why not? Yeah, I can't wait till we get to some of that stuff. I suppose the dog chairs are quite interesting, but why not? Laser Tiger chairs? Why is it just dogs? I always thought that was an interesting thing. We'll have we look at it at some point, but the fact that they're dogs, man's best friends, what have the Bene Gesserit done to them? We're quite fond of dogs here, as you might know. So the poor old Fremen, the necessity of their life, and you can imagine this, not having any kind of real dreams of leaving the world or going to another country or just going somewhere where there's water, the idea of a 2-week vacation, even this kind of thing to a Fremen. What's that? Hop on a worm to a lower latitude or something, and you can imagine, you can imagine why, it must be great for the young people. And you kind of, if you were Stilgar, I don't know about this, but I would think you wouldn't begrudge the young people a life like this. And I suppose ultimately what we're going to see, the contrasting really here, is the difference between a people just, I suppose, generationally, where one group, one part of that people have had to go through real hardship and extremely difficult times. But because they have, I suppose, on the flip side of it, their children don't get to go through that kind of thing, and don't experience it all. It's and so you get the idea, I suppose, that one thing produces hardened, tough people, the other one produces softer, kinder people, if you like. But here, there's no edge to them, if you see what I mean. Um, it's a funny thing. The ultimate home decor defense. In fact, just this week here, there were two explosions, two bombs thrown just a few feet from our house, and yeah, they went off. When was that? Was that Monday? Sunday, Saturday night. It was Saturday, 2 in the morning, something like that. So I'm kind of having to explain and what type of bombs they were, etc. The pipe bombs. My son has not kind of ever had to, has never really kind of grown up with all of the trouble stuff. You know what I mean? And it's sad that things like that are happening here, and that I have to sit and explain to him what a pipe bomb is, and etc., how to be safe and stuff. But it's that kind of difference, isn't it? Funnily enough, and it's just that, I suppose I would tell Matthew stories about my youth and stuff, and how it was different, how things were for us here in the Troubles. And you're kind of glad that, he's completely innocent of all that sort of stuff, and it's never really kind of gone away, to be honest. But to me, it's a little bit of an example of that. I think there's something similar in, I suppose, a book that I think rips off Dune a fair bit is the Game of Thrones stuff, Song of Ice and Fire. That's very much the idea in it, isn't it? That I'm trying to remember what they're called. Is it the children of spring? Is it those that are born after the harsh winter? Something like that. Those, it's the idea of hard people from hard times, soft people in soft times, this kind of thing. But as I said, I suppose if you were like, why would you begrudge them this? They've not even been permitted the dream of escape, that thing they talk about, And again, a lot of this goes to how utterly and completely that the Fremen have had to adapt to life on Arrakis, that they've had to incorporate it into every aspect of their life, that they've included that religion and law, all of these things have become amalgamated. We get the changes of the new Fremen contrasting with Stilgar's doubts and fears. That he represents very much the old Fremen. And the other thing is that Fremen. I've always thought that Stilgar is quite a forward-thinking Fremen, if you see what I mean. Summer Childs, yeah. Julian Sin, I was born in '98, never saw the Troubles. Yeah. It's a wonderful euphemism, isn't it? They never went away. Julian, to be honest with you, as I like to point out, we don't have peace in Northern Ireland. We have a peace process. But most of our terrorists got let out of prison as part of that peace process. And if, the point is that if there's no peace, they're supposed to go back in. But no, it's little things, but it's to do with reporting. Unless you're checking the local press, you'll not see this at all. It's just, we like, the rest of the UK likes to pretend that it's all done and dusted and it's fine. Our local main paper here would be the Belfast Telegraph. I'd say about 50% of its stories on any given day are paramilitary style related. There you go. That's the buzz phrase. It's not terrorism here. It's paramilitary style. Just think of Gangnam Style. It's that kind of thing, It's all in the language, isn't it? Those mad colleges in Campbellton, you had those mad beggars invading that church too, thin end of the wedge. Sweet Summer Child, actually, I think. Is that the Game of Thrones thing? Yeah. get that sense about the new Fremen. As I said, somebody pointed out, they'll become what we call the museum Fremen. You know, and that's an interesting thing, because if you think about it, these Fremen are looking outward. And ultimately the museum Fremen are going to look inward and just look at all their what we used to be, the past achievements. Put on the clothes, do the marches, this kind of thing. Have the trappings of their ancestors and take credit for their ancestors' accomplishments, that kind of thing. When they in fact are just running a kind of touristy business, aren't they? The museum Fremen. Almost be better to call them tourist Fremen. you know. But they got the bombs to stop over on the other side. The old man's name for the young ones. Thank you. Yeah, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? You got the sense that anybody in that world, the summer children, if you like, didn't do any hardship. And because of that, they're weak, they're soft, this kind of thing. Whereas you get the whole, those who are used to dealing with these winters, that kind of thing. It's a bit, I don't know. But it's interesting where Herbert takes it ultimately, I think, with the Fremen. The other thing is, as I said, you kind of think that this would be good, a life of ridiculous hardship and water, to where your life is engaged in water conservation to an extreme. To being able to look out your window and wish, I think I'd love to go on holiday. But there's more to it than that, I suppose. So, pardon me, not even being permitted the dream of escape. I just thought that was Orwellian. But also from the Sietch's point of view, maybe practical. So, this is Stilgar. He'd watched Leto's moving back as the youth walked ahead. Leto had spoken of prohibitions against movement off planet. Well, that had always been a reality for most otherworlders, even where the dream was permitted as a safety valve. But planetary serfdom had reached its peak here on Arrakis. Fremen had turned inward, barricaded in their minds as they were barricaded in their cave warrens. I've made a wee note just on this page here that this seems to be most about confinement and containment, really. But fundamentally, we've got a contrast going on within this chapter of looking inward, as much as the Fremen did, the new Fremen are looking outward. We're going to be having a look at how that relates to Alia as well. But this is what had happened. Now, just to run through that quickly. He watched Leto's moving back as the youth walked ahead. Leto had spoken of prohibitions against movement off planet, so we're going to stop people from moving. Control movement. That's right. Now, I had grabbed my copy of... Now, I'll get to this in a wee second because I don't know where... Sun Tzu, because I thought there was something in there about movement and mobility. I don't know. This is a lovely picture-y kind of book, but I don't know if I would be able to find it very quickly. Unless there's a good... Attack by stratagem. Let me just very quickly... I can't remember exactly what it is. I haven't read this since I was... goodness, in my probably my teens, actually, late teens. And we're not talking about warfare here, but there we go, number 7, maneuvering. Let's have a look at that. Is if your enemy can't move, he's pretty much screwed, generally. To restrict movement. Let me see. Different types of maneuvering with armies. Sorry, bear with me a second, folks. Oh, dear goodness. Just thought... what was it? Sorry, just looking at this here, but pretty much if you can restrict an opponent's movement, then that's a bad thing. The army that can move is better than the one that can't. Put it that way. But somebody had been asked. This. Sorry, I just saw something here and it just slapped me in the face. I think it was Sootpot. Sootpot, if you're out there, you'd asked. I think it was something to do with the Tailaxu, and somebody else might have asked me about this, about the way that the Tailaxu like to give people a way out. Art of War: when you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. But it was something to do with that. I'm not going to sit and I just grabbed this book off the shelf, thinking it would be easy for me to find what I was after. But I think the key to warfare is mobility. And deception is the basis of all warfare, isn't it? That kind of thing. I'll maybe see if I can find that actually for next time. I don't want to just give us too much dead air there, folks. So what we've got here, this is what's happened to the Fremen. Is that they're starting to look outward. This has always been a reality for people on other worlds, even where the dream was permitted as a safety valve. Prohibitions against movement off planet, that had always been a reality for most other worlders. So it seems that we were talking the other week about the pilgrims who come to Arrakis, and how they end up in being in a really good political and financial situation when they go home with their empty purses, if you like, this kind of thing. But we were kind of mentioning that is it a certain class of person that can only afford to travel, if that makes sense. And it does seem that if with the guild, etc., that it's pretty. I would say it's pretty difficult for any kind of individual or family or anything like that to say take a family off world for a holiday, for example. This kind of thing. So as much as there's travel all over the universe, prohibitions against movement off planet have always been a reality for most other worlders. And says even where the dream was permitted on as a safety valve. Now we're kind of about to talk about the Faufreluche system. I remember looking up the word finding out it's Faufreluche instead of, I used to call it Faufrelux for a long time. But the Faufreluche system, or as referred to as here, planetary serfdom. So they do let people off world as a safety valve, where the dream is permitted as a safety valve. It's maybe better to get certain individuals off planet here, there, and other, etc. I was even thinking that safety valve could be a way of, possibly for prisoners, possibly a way of recruiting Sardaukar, this kind of thing. But here we go. We're told that planetary serfdom had reached its peak here on Arrakis. Its peak here on Arrakis. Fremen had turned inward, barricaded in their minds as they were barricaded in their cave warrens. So the very meaning of Sietch is a place of sanctuary in times of trouble. Had been perverted here into a monstrous confinement of an entire population. And it's a very interesting way of looking at Sietches, isn't it? That a monstrous confinement for an entire population, 20,000 people underground or within these rock kind of things. As Frank talks a wee bit about the cave metropolis culture, as he calls it there. I suppose the most interesting of these kind of places that you can look at would be Petra. Where's Petra? Is Petra in Jordan? Isn't it? Where's Petra? Petra is southern Jordan. There we go. Famous for its rock cut architecture and water conduit systems. Also called the Rose City. I'm sure you've all seen it on TV. It's been in so many movies and so on and so forth. What's the situation with Petra today? Hit by heavy flooding in 2022. Yeah, it's an interesting place. It's kind of lots and lots of different kind of art, cultures and so on. So, and I dare say it's a lot of people go there. It's probably a big touristy place. I don't know that I've ever been out in that part of the world, but absolutely would love to go and see something like that. Hmm. It's going to be linked to rock cut architecture there. Sorry, I better come out of that, or you'll lose me. Oh dear, oh dear. They got the bombs to stop over on their side yesterday. Old Nan's name for the young ones. Let's see. Bran went through Blood Raven's Tower paratrooper boot camp. That's not easy for an Northern Irish person to say there. Or Bran went through Blood Raven's Tower paratrooper boot camp. That's got two of our two of our tricky words in there: boot and tower. The Fremen never got to move anywhere positively culturally to reflect their better standards of life due to the jihad and such. I mean, the jihad doesn't allow them to develop their mentality. Yeah, it's we're getting the sense that they've gone off world, checked out places with big oceans and stuff, inflicted their religion upon people, killed a lot of people, and then come home. And the people out there aren't particularly happy about it. They've had 12 years of Fremen boot, haven't they? Pardon me. We're getting very much that sense that the general populace of especially in the last few chapters of the universe is not happy with the jihad, and as who and anybody who ever is, I don't know, taking part in a jihad has to, possibly consider that, yeah, the people on the opposing side of it aren't going to like it one bit. you know I think it's and so I suppose the shoe's on the other foot now, isn't it? Or the desert boot is on the other foot. But we're told the original meaning of a siege is a place of sanctuary in times of trouble. The suggestion is there it's temporary, isn't it? But it's been converted into a monstrous confinement for an entire population. Something that's temporary, it's become something permanent. And as much as it's a home for the Fremen, the suggestion is it's a prison, isn't it? Pardon me. I wouldn't say that jihads would allow anybody to develop mentally, to be honest. Julian saying, Leto's tyranny nation will humanity with a need to move. He keeps people on their planet so that they value mobility. He will expand to turn every planet into a prison. I also argue that Shaddam's keeping the Fremen in their cave is a massive platonic metaphor, as in the cave itself. Julian, they're saying, "Oh, Petra's amazing." Yes, it is. It is. It's. I'd love to go and see it. Saying that, as I always point out, I'd be as happy as a pig rooting in its own feces out in that part of the world. So they say perhaps Shaddam was trying to defang the guild, who could threaten boycott of travel and panic a civilization with high expectations. Better the jihaders than the jihaded. The Shaddam thing, trying to defang the guild, you kind of get the threat from the guilds that they can pull space travel and isolate every single world. And that's kind of the thing with the Emperor, isn't it? That his troops are no use unless they can be moved. And if the guild doesn't move his troops, how does he deal with anybody? But the threat of boycott from the guild causing travel and panic to the civilization, I think it's probably got more to do with dependency. Because what, if anything, would be more resource dependent than anything? Would be a planet. You shouldn't really, unless you've done some serious hard, bad things to that planet. But yeah, to cut them off, I think to things that they're used to, and I suppose ultimately with spice in the universe, regardless of who can afford it or take it, if space travel cuts off commerce, if you like, if the ability to move spice from planet to planet, then again you have a life or death situation there, don't you? So the threat of that's where I think the real threat from the guild comes from, is that if we cut that, you're down to your spice reserves, and unless we pick trade up, etc., then you're in bother. I think there's lots of consequences for the guild pulling their services, if you like. But then I suppose it makes you think, what are the guild dependent on? Again, it's also melange. Where's Miles Tech saying, cheers, Doc. Hi, Miles. There's Travis Price saying, hey there, Doc. Happy to join from Maryland. How you doing, Travis? Been a while, guys. Nice to see you. Earl P. Dorcast is saying the guild excelled at their one slow power tactic. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we're going to get into it in a wee second here, aren't we? That this how to Shaddam's kind of attitude to what we should be done on the Imperium. And I suppose we're going to get a wee bit of what the Fremen have learned about Shaddam coming up shortly, aren't we? But the very meaning of a siege, a place of sanctuary in times of trouble, perverted into a monstrous confinement for an entire population. And again, the sense that the Fremen are migrant, if you like, from world to world, up until they end up here, and then they get stuck here. But then we're told here from Leto spoke the truth. Muad'Dib had changed all that. So that's the first time we hear that here. Stilgar felt lost. He could feel his old beliefs crumbling. The new outward vision produced life, which desired to move away from containment. How beautiful the young women are this year. That's the second time we hear that here. So again, we're reinforcing this phrase, and something about it is provoking thought and memory. It's evoking something. It's creating a response in Stilgar. And it's like an earworm, isn't it? In some ways, it's this thing that Leto has said to him. It's burrowing its way towards the black matter of his brain. To go a bit Mad Max, I think it's bugging him, and it's affecting him. He felt lost. His old beliefs crumbling. The new outward vision produced life, which desired to move away from containment. And again, the word containment. What have the Fremen been doing? Hoarding all this water, and it needs contained, I suppose, underground. The old ways, my ways, he admitted, had forced his people to ignore all history except that which turned inward onto their own travail. The old Fremen had read history out of their own terrible migrations, their flights from persecution into persecution. Now, it's just an interesting thing. It's a thing that's done here. Forced his people to ignore all history except that which turned inward onto their own travail. We get a lot of that here on both sides of the Northern Irish community. Selective history, which backs up your own particular hatred, your own particular problems, etc., and allows you to have a pop at the other people. And then because of that, you don't really understand the other side, if you like. And so for example, I'll give you a good example. But living in Northern Ireland, I grew up being educated heavily in British history, world history to a degree, but zero Irish history, none at all. Up here, what I know about Irish history, I went and did a degree in the thing, but I had to learn that else. I had to go to England to learn about my own history, my own country. It's that kind of thing, if you like. And again, certain stories, certain myths, even in this country, reinforce certain ideologies and things like that as well. And the Northern Ireland in particular is a very insular country. And what I would call it is, I've often used this term, it's called retarded atavism, which means to slow your own development so that you can be like your ancestors, like your grandparents. And we'll kind of make this point as we go along with it. But to me, then how certain people within Northern Ireland behave in terms of their culture, their ancestors, all of this kind of thing, it's very much, the museum Fremen. We have stuff like this here. And I'd say it exists in other cultures around the world too. But There's a couple of comments here as well, which I think we'll point out in a wee minute or two. But and the other thing is that the outward vision produced life, and the Fremen, I think that the inward nature of them, the level of their persecution, all of this, they're very they're casual killers, aren't they? They're more, to me, they've always been very more about death than life. And again, that's a thing about our culture here as well. You know, from the good people that brought you Halloween. There. So how beautiful the young women are this year. The old ways, my way. So this phrase provokes this thinking. The old Fremen had read history out of their own terrible migrations, their flights from persecution into persecution. It's a bit like just, as I said, getting the history of your people, and just reading out all the bad stuff, and who's to blame, why, this kind of thing, as opposed to realizing that maybe that you're in a place somewhere else and that you should move forward as a people. The old planetary government had followed the stated policy of the old Imperium. Okay, what's that? They had suppressed creativity and all sense of progress of evolution. Prosperity had been dangerous to the old Imperium and its holders of power. Pardon me. With an abrupt shock, Stilgar realized that these things were equally dangerous to the course which Alia was setting. Sudden shock about this. This is what this thinking has provoked. In other words, she wants to suppress creativity, suppress any sense of progress, and that prosperity, other people's prosperity, is dangerous to her and her regency, if you like. Pardon me. And it's this moment, the shock of this realization, that we're told again Stilgar stumbled and fell farther behind Leto. This is the second time he stumbled. And the idea, I think it's the interesting thing that he keeps tripping. And as he does so, he falls more and more behind Leto. And I think there's an interesting kind of thing going on there. I don't know what to call it, but I think it's the idea is that there's a running maybe with the metaphor that Stilgar is going to catch up to Leto here, if that makes sense, in terms of his thinking. In the old ways and old religions, there'd be no future, only an endless now. Before Muad'Dib, Stilgar saw, the Fremen had been conditioned to believe in failure, never in the possibility of accomplishment. Well, they'd believed late kinds, but he set a 40-generation timescale. That was no accomplishment. That was a dream, which he saw now had also turned inward. Muad'Dib had changed that. That's the second time we hear that. Pardon me. So the old way is that there is no future. There's just the now, the necessity of the now, the living in the moment, if you like, for the Fremen. The future, I think that's again oxymoronic in a sense that they've had this dream, and I actually thought that they had that dream before, and we're told it's late kinds here. Well, they believed late kinds, but I was wondering why not Pardo kinds. But then so maybe it's the necessity that Pardo has a child by the Fremen in order to convince them. So maybe it is late that we're thinking on here. But the Fremen have been conditioned to believe in failure, never in the possibility of accomplishment. And I wonder, does that come from the fact that they're trapped on the planet? That this migratory people who've always been on the move to escape their persecutions, these kind of things. They get stuck here, don't they? And they're whatever they were before they arrived on Arrakis. They're forced to change. They're forced to adapt, and it is in every way imaginable. but no conditioning, I suppose, is what we're being told here. Never in the possibility of accomplishment, to believe in failure. And I think some of that's going to be to do with environment. I think they believe late Kynes, but he'd set a 40 generation timescale. That's about what, 800 years, I think. That was no accomplishment. That was a dream, which he saw now had also turned inward. So again, just this. Uh, how would I put it? Again, it's the idea that the Fremen have become an inward-looking people, if you like. Even the dream of changing Arrakis that Leto has given them, that's produced this kind. Oh, let's produce an Eden-like planet, this kind of thing. That's an inward-looking dream as well. Again, and if you think about it, I suppose the word insular, it's not considering that they're part of a bigger universe or any of these things. It's just let's make this planet it's green, if you like. It's a dream, but and again, the dreams were told prior to that they had not been permitted the dream of escape. So to dream of change is one thing, I suppose, but the thing that they can't dream of on Arrakis, and that's the key word there, is escape, isn't it? And we're told here Muad'Dib had changed that. I've just pointed out, I made a wee note to myself here, and again we hear that again. But we've got an exclamation mark on it this time. Whereas the previous time we had it was just a full stop. Right, bear with me a second. I'm just looking for something to hold this page down here. Where's my paper? Paperweights. There we are. But don't sit. There you go. Sorry about that, folks. Goodness gracious. Here, I better catch up with some comments by the looks of it. Let me see. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Okay, good. On the top of the next page. Bear with me a second, folks. Goodness, you've been nattering here, right? Earl said the guild excelled at their one soft power tactic, and Earl said poor Stilgar. Miles says agree with the sentiment of not enough laser taggers. Yes, indeed. And so they said Travis, greetings from Virginia. And Earl said he wasn't able to see beyond the religiosity until it was too late. It's the same here in America. You learn select history, but nothing of your own roots if they lay elsewhere. Share what Frank calls plastic memory. That's a good one. I'll have to look into that, Joanne. Plastic memory. It's an interesting word, plastic, isn't it? What I get from here, Miles is saying, what I get from here is that we are all ready to enjoy Christmas. Oh, we're not fond of Christmas in this house, but I hope it's never particularly a good thing, I think. But I suppose have you guys had your Thanksgiving? Is that correct? When's Thanksgiving? It's an interesting American holiday, isn't it? It's Canadian. Is it Canadian as well? Thanksgiving, or is it just the US of A? 20th? Yes, you just had your Thanksgiving. Yes, Canada, St. Lucia, Liberia, and unofficially in countries like Brazil and Germany. There you go. Oh, we don't have it here. Seems that, yeah. Thanksgiving, I used to catch just the odd. When I was used to watch Quinn's Ideas, he would deep fat fry a turkey every year, which is just just an obscenity, Just oh dear. I was saying Alia was under her own ultimate suppression of the self while suppressing the Fremen. Cynthia saying in the old Arrakis desert, stumbling would be dangerous. A recognizable non-random pattern that would attack the worm. Another reason to suppress new thinking, perhaps. Yes, indeed. Julian saying, great observation. Not half. It's almost he's walking, stumbling without rhythm. Pardon me. Miles is saying anacyclosis as described by the ancients, although with a few caveats, everything is continually and gradually evolving. as the memories in our body not really restricted to our brain in the sense that several parts of the body participate in memory formation and retrieval. Our memory is flexible because it updates. Uh, also, hang on, is it updates? Also, as you're far removed from a memory, we tend to recall it in different ways. For example, when a close relative dies, it's hard to access some memories without pain, so they become blocked. A student of mine told me that she didn't remember anything about its father, and he only had passed away 2 years earlier. I later on went to experiment the same after my dad died. Point is, our memory is edited by the story we tell ourselves. And this also happens at a societal level. Our traditions and histories are those kept by the old ones. Yes, very good point. I've been thinking a lot about memory lately myself, Miles. And, oddly enough, to my own father passing away the last couple of years. You know, memory's a funny thing, isn't it? I suppose I was looking at certain points of my life. It's about what you're saying to do with your narrative, perhaps the story. But I was looking at certain parts of my life and had no good memories, and I was going, that's a bit crap, isn't it? And I know that I had good times back then. You know, things weren't all bad, but I couldn't remember a thing. And it's interesting that but you remember all these things that happened to you when you were a kid and stuff, all the bad things, and that they tend not to go away. But I tend to think that's kind of nature's way of warning you about things. Don't let things repeat. But and I suppose actually thinking about it there now, I just had a ping in my head of a good memory. Um, but when I was trying, and I wasn't trying to solicit one there, but that's the interesting thing. I was trying to think of something good from a certain period of my life, and I just was coming up blank. But I've been thinking a lot about memories lately. You know, and yeah, we tend to put a good light on the good memories and a bit of a some dramatic music on the bad ones. But the other thing I was thinking about, Miles, just sometimes is all the different people that we've been, you know, and that certain things really do changes. And I was wondering about 10-year-old Russ compared to say 13-year-old Russ, and again 16-year-old Russ is a different person altogether. By the time I'm 25, I'm very different. But all of the people that I've been, I suppose, if you like, it's the same with my dad. There's different kind of aspects to his personality. He's kind of been different people over the years. There's a core of someone in there that all the different versions of me share, if you like. But um, and they're all me. But it does make you think the things that change you and transform you into something. Some good, some bad. Um, but yeah, hence, I always go with the old Heraclitus. You never stand in the same river twice. You're never the same person from any given moment to another. Sometimes the changes are slight, and sometimes they're extremely profound. But sometimes they're even physical. When my mum passed away, I'm kind of ginger, and my beard would be kind of red with blonde. The minute my mom died, my whole beard here just turned white. And I was like, oh, and I kind of knew why, and I didn't think I'd had that big a shock or anything. But that was just a wee physical change, and I'd always thought about it. But it's just, I don't know, things things happen. But it is memories funny. And memory holds you to things. I think sometimes it won't let you forget certain things. And sometimes you have to just maybe try not to fixate on things, or I don't know, dump stuff if you like. I think that's why I try to fill my head with rubbish, any old crazy facts about anything, or just read books and stuff. But yeah, it's very interesting. Our memory is edited by the story we tell ourselves, and this also happens at a societal level. Our traditions and history are those kept by the old ones. History of every people has been rewritten and edited across history, either because beaten by others, conquering others, or fusing with others, held new political regiments, rewrite history, or try. Yeah. We were talking about that the other day, actually, Miles, that regardless of your political establishment, sooner or later, some historian will write up a history on you that won't have bias or this kind of thing. People throughout history try to suppress the truth, try to hide things and this kind of thing. Sometimes successfully, though. Pardon me, I'll get a wee sip of cough medicine here. We've got the whole cancel thing, cancel culture and stuff like this. Today, and was it the Romans had a thing, memento damnatio, which is basically someone who's so bad, etc. They kill that person, then they wipe out every instance of their existence, every written word. This kind of that there will be no memory. It's the memory of the damned, isn't it? Remember that. That's it. They're just gone. It's a thing that they did, and the fact that we know that they did. The question becomes, who did they do it to? And did they do it so well that we'll never know, or who knows? It's quite interesting. Yeah, but it's the same thing. Get people, the cancel culture things. Not, I think infamy works as in many ways as much as fame does, if you see what I mean. And time has a big. I don't know. I suppose time plays a large factor, I suppose, in separating people from the events of the historical thing that we're looking at. And generally, but the more removed we are from it, the more honest we can be about it, unless there's something that kind of pervades through that culture into our own, if you like, And then it can be a matter of interpretation. But yeah, goodness gracious, we're all over the place tonight, aren't we, folks? But it is memory is a really fascinating thing. And I think we still haven't got quite to grips with the human mind yet, have we? Across history, either because being beaten by others, conquering others, or fusing with others, held new political regiments, rewrite history, or try. Or saying at Miles Tag 87, so the nature of memories must have also been affected from the various prevailing media forms too throughout history, like spoken word to written to mass media. Basically, we remember the things we need to remember in order, this is Miles responding, in order to continue moving forward. Yeah, we get into a story and hold on to those things that validate our experience. Basically, remember the things we need to remember in order to continue moving forward. We get into a story and hold on to those things that validate our experience. Another says, smother the subconscious with the memory overload. Freud's archetypes will have to fight the hordes of one-dimensional TV and movie cliches. Very good. Or we're giving J. Michael Straczynski's quote on television the other week. I think, it was a cultural wasteland full of inappropriate metaphors and our unrealistic portrayal of life. There's a very good little speech from a security guard in Babylon 5. So, Muad'Dib had changed all that with the exclamation mark. During the jihad, Fremen had learned much about the old Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, the 81st Padishah of House Carino, to occupy the Golden Lion throne and reign over this imperium of uncounted worlds, had used Arrakis as a testing place for these policies, which he'd hoped to implement in the rest of his empire. His planetary governors on Arrakis had cultivated a persistent pessimism to bolster their power base. They made sure that everyone on Arrakis, even the free-roaming Fremen, became familiar with numerous cases of injustice and insoluble problems. They had been taught to think of themselves as a helpless people for whom there was no succor. And how beautiful the young women are this year. Right, sorry folks, if you excuse me a wee quick sec, I'm just going to run the loo very quickly and I'll be right back. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Pardon me. Yes, the jihad. During the jihad, Fremen had learned much about the old Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV. You get the sense that by the sense of stagnation in the empire just comes. He's the 81st of that house to occupy the throne. Wow, what a 81 generations, if you like, of Carinos, and how little change that would be. Even if you think about something like the British royal family, the actual families themselves have changed quite a bit over the years. It's different families, But here we go. The 81st of Padishah of House Carino occupied the Golden Lion throne and reign over the Imperium of uncounted worlds as a test for these policies which he'd hoped to implement in the rest of his empire. So Arrakis is used as a testing place for more than just, I suppose, botany and ecology and stuff like that. We have the botanical testing stations all over the planet from Dune. And we're also being told that this is a place where the Emperor likes to test out policies. Is this a practice run for his present planet? This kind of thing. And I suppose in relation to the testing place for Empire, if you like, is Ulster. Is the and I've made a little note here: England and the Ulster, in brackets, British Empire. So basically, the plantations of Ulster are the test run for Empire for the British here. And oddly enough, we're the last kind of Ulster's Northern Ireland still part of the United Kingdom, if you like. So we're one of the first parts of the British Empire and one of the last to leave, I think. Not that we've left it. So as planetary governors on Arrakis had cultivated a persistent pessimism to bolster their power base, that was done here. They made sure that everyone on Arrakis, even the free-roaming Fremen, became familiar with numerous cases of injustice and insoluble problems. That was done here too. They've been taught to think of themselves as a helpless people for whom there was no succor. Again, done here. We're a small island, we're insular, this kind of thing. And it brings you back to this little, how beautiful the young women are this year. That's the third time we've heard this statement. Stilgar, we're told, as he watched Leto's retreating back, began to wonder how the youth had set these thoughts flowing. And just by uttering a seemingly simple statement. Because of that statement, Stilgar found himself viewing Alia and his own role on the council in an entirely different way. So it's interesting that I think we were talking about previously, whenever the preacher was doing the talking with his voice, that how did Alia kind of not know that, it wasn't even questioning, have I been compelled by a voice? Here we see that Stilgar at least has kind of got the wits to figure out what's going on here. What has that lad said to me? How has this youth set these thoughts flowing? How the youth, he's began to wonder how the youth had set these thoughts flowing, and just by uttering a seemingly simple statement. Because of that statement, Stilgar found himself viewing Alia and his own role on the council in an entirely different way. And not just that, I suppose, that he's really just looking around him and looking at it's provoked something. And the key in it, I suppose, is the young Fremen women, how beautiful they are this year. What's that indicative of, What is it? Isn't that a good thing, Now, Alia was, we've got a couple of wee sayings here from Alia in the past tense, if you like, and it's going to give us a fair indicator. I've marked some of these in red. Alia was fond of saying that old ways gave ground slowly. Stilgar admitted to himself that he'd always found this statement vaguely reassuring. Yeah, it's hard for old things don't get out the way very quickly, do they? Change was dangerous. Invention must be suppressed. Individual willpower must be denied. And that almost sounds as if you read that out of 1984. To be honest with you, it's very, very Orwellian, isn't it? Change was dangerous, invention must be suppressed, individual willpower must be denied. What other function did the priesthood serve then to deny individual will? So that's again the priesthood here, the religious aspect. We talk about delaying things, slowing things, retarding them, if you like. Alia kept saying that opportunities for open competition had to be reduced to manageable limits. But that meant the threat of technology could only be used to confine populations, just as it had served its ancient masters. Any permitted technology had to be rooted in ritual. Otherwise, again, Stilgar stumbled. That's number 3. Uh, He was at the Quannet now and saw Leto waiting beneath the apricot orchard, which grew along the flowing water. Stilgar heard his feet moving through uncut grass. Uncut grass. So it's just the way that there's just backing up the old siege warrens of the cave metropolis culture, complete with elaborate seals and moisture traps at every entrance, were giving way to open villages built often with mud bricks. Mud bricks. So that's the kind of there's our mud bricks moment from Stilgar previously, and now we've got our uncut grass. And these things are freaking him out a bit, aren't they? They're things that he shouldn't be seeing on Arrakis, that they're alien in a sense, aren't they? And he's really, what's he done? It's interesting. I think that he has this presence of mind. I think and the characterization of Stilgar in this chapter is excellent. I think it's really good, but has the presence of mind that there's something going on with this statement. It's, as I said, it's like an earworm, isn't it? How beautiful the young women are this year. So his third stumble, he was at the Quannet now and saw Leto waiting beneath the apricot orchard, which grew along the flowing water. Stilgar heard his feet moving through uncut grass. Uncut grass? What can I believe? Stilgar asked himself. It was proper for a Fremen of his generation to believe that individuals needed a profound sense of their own limitations. Traditions were surely the most controlling element in a secure society. People had to know their boundaries of their time, of their society, of their territory. What was wrong with the Siege as a model for all thinking? Now, wow. Now, we'll get there to a wee second. It's proper for a Fremen of his generation to believe that individuals needed a profound sense of their own limitations. Now, I suppose their own limitations I would argue, aren't the ones that are necessarily imposed upon you by your society, which is what he goes on to talk about. Traditions are the most controlling element in secure society. People had to know the boundaries of their time, their society, of their territory. Again, in this country, we have the traditions tied into communities, mark territory, if you see what I mean. And there's even, again, boundaries of time, if you like, attached to that. A sense of enclosure should pervade every individual choice, should fence in the family, the community, and every step taken by a proper government. Again, one of the things that they talk about in relation to Northern Ireland and the Troubles is what's called the siege mentality of both communities, oddly enough. It's often funny, I think, that what one community says about the other is often true of themselves, if you see what I mean. And I think you got that same kind of siege mentality in apartheid South Africa, if you see what I mean. And it's not necessarily what Frank is saying here, through Stilgar's thinking here, is it's not necessarily a smart thing for a government to do, because it will have consequences. And again, they can be far-reaching. Excuse me, folks. Enclosure. What were the words we were talking about earlier? Confinement, containment, enclosure. It was proper for a Fremen of his generation to believe that individuals needed a profound sense of their own limitations. There's nothing wrong with that. We all need to know our limitations. And it's not in a bad way. If you see what I mean, we can all try to do things. I'm someone who's become aware very much of my limitations, if you like, since hitting the age of 50 or so, which is only about a year. I'm 51. Just stuff to do with eyesight, and my ability to do certain things has changed. My ability to go without sleep for a ridiculous amount of time has also changed, but in particular, it's things to do with my body, I suppose. Eyesight. And I used to be a sort of person, I would sit here, if I was doing it, I'd sit and work for like 12 hours at this desk and not budge. I can't do it now. I would have to take a break every few hours. My eyes start to get tired, that kind of thing, whether I'm wearing glasses or not. And, as a musician, for example, limitations, there are things that you can do on your own. There are things that you can't. I don't know. I might have become a musician. Well, I was a professional musician, but I might have had a go at it properly. If only I could sing. I'm a good musician. I can write good songs, but I can't sing a note. And I am literally that guy. I can't sing, and no one's ever been able to teach me to sing. I apologize for my singing whenever I do. I love singing. So your own limitations, we can't all do everything, Well, it's certainly fun to try, but it is good to know your own limitations, if you know what I mean. You can push limits and stuff like that, but some are boundaries that you need to know where they are, if you see what I mean. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't know their limitations. And as such, we get to see quite a lot of funny videos of them on the internet, So traditions are surely the most controlling element in a secure society. Yes. Traditions go with rituals, don't they? People had not to know their boundaries of their time, of their society, of their territory. That's got to be the worst cough medicine in history. Every time I take that cough medicine, it wrecks me throat. I'm going to stop buying it. Excuse me a wee second, folks. Goodness gracious. A sense of enclosure should pervade every individual choice, should fence in the family, the community, and every step taken by a proper government. Stilgar, hang on. Sorry, I missed something here. Sorry, it was probably the really important bit. And I'll check your comments in a quick second here. People had to know the boundaries of their time, of their society, of their territory. What was wrong with the Siege as a model for all thinking? That's the important bit there. Wow, I've written. And the Siege, it has a sense of enclosure. It pervades every individual choice, fences in the family, the community, etc., etc. So Stilgar thinks that Siege life is a great model for, it works well on Arrakis and it's done all this. It's, wow, why isn't that a good model for government, pretty much? For all thinking, sorry, as the Siege is a model for all thinking. That's what made me write down wow next to that wouldn't leave much room for free thought, would it? A sense of enclosure should pervade every individual choice, should fence in the family, the community, and every step taken by a proper government. Let me just check if I've written that down correctly. And every step taken by a proper government, yes. Now, Stilgar came to a stop and stared across the orchard at Leto. The youth stood regarding him with a smile. Sorry, I'll just check quickly, folks. I said I would have a wee look at your comments there before. Let me see. Oh, goodness, there's loads. Right. No, hang on. Let me see. Jumping back. Bloody hell. Right. Okay. Young's archetypes. Think I just debunked myself, says Earl. Or would that be a rebunk? Redebunk. Miles says, about rewriting history, my brother asked me about some famous people being, is that racists or extremists? Yes. My answer was that regardless of how you did, it will come the time that they will call you immoral. Yeah. All of the things that we're not too fond of these days, I'd argue that people weren't too fond of them in the past either. It depends on who you're asking, I suppose. Even if you agreed with the collective thought, you disagree. I read that Irish life expectancy fell to 14 years in 1849. Yeah, it was not good. Well, that's a lot of people know about the Great Famine. It was just a biggie, but it was actually the last of a series of famines. I think there was about 10 of them in total. But yes, the English Parliament sent blankets to eat, famously. But yes, we lost a ridiculous amount of our population. Census figures and stuff, as much as the sort of immigration's become a big sort of talking point in Ireland at the minute. The interesting thing is that our population still hasn't recovered, if you include the whole island. I mean, I think the population of Ireland around the time of the Great Famine was about 8 million, and we're not there yet. I think we were close to it, but that's 1849, 1949. There's 100 years. It's 170, 180, 180 years maybe. And that one of, again, how much it's affected our population, but as much as it detracted from our population, it helped a lot of your guys. America and Canada and Australia got a whole bunch of Irish people for it, and other places. Pardon me. Miles saying at our pardon me, sorry, I'm hiccuping here. Our memories in the sense of how we remember and experience, yes, and also in the way that every piece of technology also changes. Herbert also pointed that out. As mobile technology is making babies' brains raw. I was saying it, Miles, it's cool being able to realize the extra complexities and layers within Herbert's writing as one gets older and more knowledgeable and discerning. Yeah, extreme epic argument leagues on social media are bad for people's mental facilities in every way. Yeah. I think when people are just arguing for the sake of arguing, sometimes, indeed, I read Dune as a teenager, already interested in genetics and evolution. It simply blew my mind and made me fall more deeply into that. Ha ha ha. Excuse me, folks. Sorry about my throat. Miles is saying, for example, many of the pioneers in the fields of genetics and evolution, early 1900s, late 1800s, most of them are regarded currently as racist because they realize that we can get smarter, dumber. Yeah, weaker or stronger as a society. And so they say, Miles, I read Dune as a teenager and it sent me down the path of religious and political thought and critical thinking regarding the same. Many other paths have opened up over the years, though. Excuse me. God's sake. Sorry, it's just my throat. I got hit with you're not getting any money for your advertising a couple of weeks ago. On our book club for I kind of got a sense of what it was about, and I tidied it up a bit, I suppose. But yeah, censorship and all these kind of things. We do talk about some pretty adult topics because of the Dune series. Miles said many of those topics are currently taboo because it would be painful to be described as inferior by others. It's not about who is better, but how we can improve the opportunities for everyone to improve. And Earl was saying, yes, I remember even in recent times the top groundbreaking DNA was cancelled for simply starting biological truths. DNA researcher, yes. So a top groundbreaking DNA researcher was what Earl was saying was cancelled for simply stating biological truths. See, I think people like that shouldn't let them. You know, I think they should fight. Quite frankly, um, or saying that Cynthia, yes, Cynthia, can clue people into how at the top of power. Oh, hang on, I've lost that. Where'd it go? Bear with me a second. Sorry. There we go. Uh, this is Earl replying to Cynthia. Yes, Cynthia, can clue people into how at the top power levels pragmatism dominates motivation. Miles is saying, thing is that everything in nature works in order to adapt. You can look up the article about British taxi drivers having a bigger hippocampus memory storage than average. Practicing it will become a practice on it will come. Sorry, yeah, the British taxi drivers in London have to do what's called the knowledge, which is a hell of a thing. I had a friend who gave up teaching to do it. You know, and he was of all the people that I've actually known who were teachers, he was the one person that should have been a teacher. And I think the job got to him. I think, but he went and became a taxi driver. But in London, that's the knowledge is what you've got to do, and that's a feat. It's a memory feat, isn't it? You know, so I do my wee notes. Somebody's pointed out to me. I think it might have been X-Ray Zulu or somebody. You know, but the fact that I do my notes by hand and that I write with a pen and I write with a fountain pen and stuff, that's good for my. Somebody's done some research on that. That's good for your memory and stuff. You know, good for your brain. But yeah, I think adapting is very important. Where are we now? Things that everything in nature works in order to adapt. You can look up the article. Oh yeah, British taxi drivers having a bigger hippocampus memory center than average. Practicing it will come. Or saying with all the religious and patrioticness indeed intended as motivations for the masses. Miles says, I will say that there's no such thing as biological truth. Nature shows otherwise. No rule can't be broken. If not now, you just wait. That's how we got here. Sadly, these topics are lunatic magnets. It's kind of, I go with that. There's always something quicker, smarter, wiser, stronger, whatever you think. There is always an exception to the rule, and I've yet to find something where there isn't. If you see what I mean. But I was thinking about cell division the other day. You know, from 1 to 2 to 4. If you see what I mean. And I was thinking, there's no number 3 there. And that got me just, and it was a silly thought, I thought, but maybe not, you know, not that I know much about it. But yeah, nature, and you know, nature doesn't stop on this planet. Is the other thing I like to point out. You know, who knows what's out there. But yeah, I was saying that's interesting about the cab drivers, and also highlights some scary implications for the younger generation's minds. It does actually, doesn't it? 14 years is such an insane number. Thank you for sharing, Cynthia. It's very glad to hear that. Indeed, Dune is a piece of work that makes you think hard. The other did that made me feel similar as Dostoevsky. I would say, and especially for being the nearest subject to the world's most prosperous power at the time. Hey Doc, what's the cocktail? It's blackcurrant cordial. It's water with blackcurrant flavoring in it. Is that what you? I don't know. Diluting diluted blackcurrant and water. Oh. I figured because I'm always having fizzy drinks, it's always making me burp and try to get things to work a certain way. So I thought I'd go with cordial, and it just does the same thing. So there you go. But that's all it is. It's just blackcurrant cordial, which I love. Christopher Crowley saying Leto self-described himself as the ultimate Fremen. So Stilgar's love of siege life being a model for the Empire kind of makes sense of what the Empire becomes later on. Stilgar made the case for siege life, and Leto quite cruelly implemented it for all. And Earl is saying everything is ephemeral, cultural, or identity-based. Non-issues at the top-down derived discussions in mainstream society media discourse. Never issues-based policy and possibility of actionable solutions discussed. Oh dear. I always like some of the thing. What was I thinking about the other day? And I was just saying to my wife that as far as I was concerned, that the world portrayed in the early 80s, 2000 AD, particularly the world of Judge Dredd, is here now. I think it was I watched somebody saw a tree in half with a plastic knife, and it took them God knows how many hours, and it was like a YouTube short, and I just went, why? And it just made me start to think of the Chopper stories, in 2000 AD. His dad's a professional head butter or something like that. The stupid hobbies and things that people in Mega City One do to just not go mad, basically. Um, Whenever they're actually all completely insane. But I think Chopper's dad, Marlon Shakespeare, isn't it, is Chopper. That's a great set of stories. But he's originally he is Chopper. It's the Midnight Sur. Is it the? It's a graffiti story he originally appears in. It's a graffiti scroll war between this young kid called Chopper and what turns out to be one of the city's painting robots that's malfunctioned, called the Phantom. And eventually, the character of Chopper gets crushed by the judges, and he goes on to become a super surfer. It's one of the really great stories in 2000 AD is the super surf stories. But in fact, one of the greatest stories of all time in 2000 AD is the Chopper and the Phantom, the graffiti story. It's a great story. It's just a kid and a robot, and the full force of Justice Department aimed against them. Just trying to make their tags. But yeah, there's a lot of Mega City One from the '70s walking around the streets at the minute. I think, even the fashion. Pardon me. Yes, the Mega City One. I love Judge Dredd. Haven't been near him in years, but all good things need to come to an end, I think. I suppose for new things as well, isn't there? I've been thinking a lot about that, particularly. I've been looking at particularly literature at the minute, as if we're in a fin to sequel, basically an end of the cycle. I possibly think the end of the cycle's already happened. But it's a bit, the previous one, kind of 1850s, ends in about 1914. Huge push in intellectual creativity within literature, and just produces this huge amount of great literature, some great authors, and then World War One happens and basically puts an end to it. But you get these kind of little runs in history, if you like. But that kind of makes me think. I'm kind of thinking of literature at the minute like that. So let me just figure out where we were. Sorry, folks. Cut grass was on it. What can I believe? Oh yes, right. Pardon me. Stilgar came to a stop and stared across the orchard at Leto. The youth stood there regarding him with a smile. Stilgar's thoughts here are, does he know the turmoil in my head? Stilgar wondered. Pardon me. And the old Fremen naib tried to fall back on the traditional catechism of his people. Each aspect of life required a single form. Its inherent circularity based on secret inner knowledge of what will work, what will not work. The model for life, for the community, for every element of the larger society, right up to and beyond the peaks of government. That model had to be the siege, and its counterpart in the sand, Shai Halud. The giant sandworm was surely a most formidable creature, but when threatened, it hid in the impenetrable deeps. That's a word that jarred with me there. Just because it's jarring, I think. And I'm sure it's perfectly fine. I would have went with depths myself, personally. The impenetrable depths. But it is fine. Deeps. It's just, it has a odd sound to it, I suppose. More noticeable when you read it out aloud, I think. Every aspect of life requires a single form. It's a mono thought kind of thing, isn't it? Inherent circularity based on secret inner knowledge of what will work and what will not work. If you want to break it down to something like what does that really mean, it's a bit like think about everything you've ever read, and an awful lot of things that you eat. They're absolutely fine to eat, but there's an awful lot of things that we don't eat, and we know the fact that's because they're lethal. And that it's that kind of knowledge, if you like, that's built up over time. And again, it can be knowledge like that can be so very easily lost. That buries safety. That one's not. And single form is inherent circularity based on secret inner knowledge of what will work and what will not work, what will keep you alive, what will not get you killed, this kind of thing. The model for life for the community, for every element of larger society, right up until beyond the peaks of government, it had to be the siege. I love the siege. Siege life. Oh dear. All the people, so smelly. Sorry, Park Life by is it Blur? I was just go Siege Life. I'll have a wee moment there, folks. Sorry about that. So the Siege, in terms of its physical representation, and it has a spiritual counterpart in the Shai Hulud, and what happens when the Fremen are generally threatened like Shai Hulud, they go hide in the impenetrable deeps. And Stilgar's thoughts here are change is dangerous. Stilgar told himself sameness and stability were the proper goals of government. Sameness and stability, if that is the proper goals of government, then it's almost antithetical to life, isn't it? Because we need change and variance in order to survive. Change is the only constant in life. And so, I suppose most governments in some shape or form have, at most countries in the world, either have some kind of liberal type government, people who are more into freedoms and things like that, or it has some type of conservative government, those who want to hoard and basically keep what they have for now, and not worry too much about it. Change is dangerous, of course it is, but without it, I'd say it's a lot worse. Stilgar told himself sameness and stability are the proper goals of government, and it's the use of the word proper, by the way, there. I thought was interesting because in the previous chapter we had Stilgar referring to Leto taking on the position of emperor if it's meet, and MEET, that word in that sense is an archaic form of the word proper. The word proper is everything's got to be proper with Stilgar. And again, this is for the fourth time now within this chapter, but the young men and women were beautiful. And they remembered the words of Muad'Dib as he deposed Shaddam IV. It's not long life to the emperor that I seek, it's long life to the Imperium. And Stilgar's thoughts here, isn't that what I've been saying to myself? Stilgar wondered. Long life to the emperor? No. Long life to the Imperium? Fair enough. The Imperium is an abstract, isn't it? It's not like long life to the people of the Imperium. It's just long life to the concept of the empire, if you see what I mean. That's what he's really saying there. The institution. Not long life to the emperor that I seek, long life to the Imperium. Isn't that what I've been saying to myself? Stilgar wondered. And the question is it? Why he's asking himself. It doesn't sound as if he's too sure. He resumed walking, headed toward the siege entrance slightly to Leto's right. The youth moved to intercept him. Muad'Dib had said another thing, Stilgar reminded himself. Just as individuals are born, mature, breed and die, so do societies and civilizations and governments. That's fair enough. Dangerous or not, there would be change. The beautiful young Fremen knew this. They could look outward and see it, prepare for it. Stilgar was forced to stop. It was either that or walk right over Leto. So Leto's just walked right out, intercepted him here. The youth peered up at him owlishly and said, "You see, still, tradition isn't the absolute guide you thought it was." And that's the end of our chapter. And what a fascinating little chapter it is. tradition, ritual, stagnation, confinement, containment, concealment, I suppose, as well. This chapter, this question of have you noticed that the young women of Arrakis were very beautiful that year? This kind of thing. It's brought all of this out within this chapter, that it's brought a comparison between the individual and I suppose society as a whole, old ways and new ways, the old Fremen and the new Fremen, the old Arrakis, the new Arrakis, the old Imperium and the new Imperium. We get a sense of what Alia is up to do, what she's about to do. We get a little bit of hint about the technologies that we were talking about in the previous chapter, where we had that bit of I don't know, where the sentences didn't quite make sense. The one thing that I was thinking about that was that in my copy of the book, there's actually a missing section, a gap in the text, and it's around that same page. And I was kind of hoping, or perhaps thinking, that whatever had been there, the thing that was missing with that, and also there on that sort of messed up, I suppose, section of that chapter. Is that chapter 16 we were talking about? It was, yeah. I've actually got, there's a gap within the text here in my copy. Not too far away from the mistake. If you see, I kind of was wondering, I wonder had it maybe been cut and pasted somewhere else in the book, this kind of thing. But there you go. It's a very interesting little chapter. It's more about the change, what's going on Arrakis, not just to the planet, but to the Fremen. We get to view this kind of change through Stilgar. Again, it's this statement that have you noticed still how beautiful? It's a question, how beautiful the young women are this year, is responsible for all of this, all of this thinking. And we get to the point where, once upon a time, a little bit of green somewhere out in this landscape, you're like, wow, look at that. And now, the things that particularly offend them are, mud bricks. There you go, for the little villages. And it's the grass, isn't it? Uncut grass. It's these things are, and probably should, I'm probably a bit alien to Stilgar. As much as he's gone about, this is the process of transforming the world. You transform your environment has an effect on you, Something else I was thinking about today, I had to get the girls out before it got dark here. I'm going for a walk up the road, and it's so grey, the sky here all the time, that it could get you down a bit, I think, but it's always contrasted with such amazing greenness everywhere. This here, just, that as long as you don't look up, it's great. That kind of got me thinking about what Seamus Heaney said about the Northern Irish, and his he uses the myth of Heracles and Antaeus. I believe he's kind of fond of that one. That as long as we don't look up, as long as we're in the mud, and as long as we're happy to stay there, we'll be all right. This kind of thing is the essence of the poem, if you like. Antaeus is a chthonic kind of demigod whose mother is the earth. As long as his feet touch the ground, he's okay. He can't be harmed. But Hercules lifts him up off the ground and throttles him, doesn't he? But there we go, folks. That's the end of that chapter. I'll catch up with your comments in a wee section, and that's so 18 chapters. Stumblings times 3. How beautiful the young women are. We got 4 of them. Muad'Dib had changed all that a couple of times. Change and forgetfulness, confinement and containment, tradition and ritual. The Fremen turned inward, the new Fremen looking outward. This kind of thing, and also that it's. We can also see a little bit about what Alia's, what's her thinking, etc. And the threat of technology being used to confine populations. This kind of thing. We don't want people moving. We want to control their movement within the empire, etc., etc. Yeah, and it's a thing that's done. It's interesting enough. But yes, we're starting to see the Fremen really start to become this museum Fremen. That will take time, I think. Let me just catch your comments there, folks. I was reading just in terms of where I'm reading at the minute. I've stopped the Lensman just briefly because I managed to get about. That's where I'm at. I'm on Fire and Blood at the minute. I've a bunch of books going, but I've read the first three Lensman books. And just quick pause because I wanted to try and tear through Fire and Blood. I'm half the time I like George R. R. Martin, the other half I'm not that fond of him, but it's good. It's a good read. He's a bit long-winded, isn't he? Still on our Arabian Nights, Volume 3. We were talking about the sense of Arrakis that I might have from the covers of these books, for example. That kind of thing, rather than cardboard boxes and this kind of thing, That is cover shows a detail of a street scene by Gustav Barenfeld, the Bridgman Art Library. There we are. But yeah, so that's the end of another big notebook, folks. It'll be joining the ones behind me there. So that's 4, 5, 6. That's our volume 7 of our book club notes, which we tend to use to kind of look stuff up and refer to other things, and we do. They're proven very useful that we can find stuff. Where do we do this? So time for that's my new volume 2. There we go, ready to go for next week. I have to do something a bit better covers on these, and I pretty much set up the books and I do a little doodle. There we go. Free. So I wonder how many. I'm not too sure. Children of Dune's a good old length. Actually, it could well take 4 of these books. But let's just catch up with your comments here, folks. Writing something down helps you in the sense that this is Miles saying that you recruit other regions of your brain body. Hell, if you also sing it and invent a dance for it, although silly, you can dance your memory recall. I would not be disinclined to do that. Earl says mainstream publishing is bottleneck for many genres. Yeah. For me, it's a problem we didn't used to have within science fiction. Actually, enough, we go back a few years enough. But the problem is a vast amount of it's quantity over quality. There's too much. And to try and find the good things amongst the vast, it's ridiculous. And interestingly, even you can read science, you can go out there and find science fiction that's not science fiction. It's got a science fiction setting. This is a very epistemic chapter, says Joe. With only very narrow story style and author identify qualification. Yeah, that's the problem. It's hard. How do you tell a good book? And you can't judge one by its cover. That's a George R. R. Martin word. Let's see. That's part of the reason that the simulation hypothesis has gained momentum in later years. The same reason it had momentum when Plato wrote the public. It does. Feels and looks like we have been doing the same stuff all over across our history, at least the ones we can collectively recall. I've been thinking a bit about that too. Yeah, that seems we do repeat ourselves. I was also thinking about how amazing we think we are in the 21st century. And in relation to just, if we want to sort of like draw comparisons, I think we're actually up amongst, as much as we think that we're the best that's ever lived, we're also amongst the worst, I think, in history, to be honest with you. Not necessarily in individuals as much as I'm talking about, well, we can be enlightened and all that, but collectively we're pretty bad over the 20th, certainly over the 20th century anyway. And the 21st century doesn't like to seem to be taking off to anything better, But it's all good. I don't know. Sometimes I think things sort themselves out. We were looking at what's going on in the Middle East there the other day, and going, oh great, there's a ceasefire. Maybe something good will come of that. And then we were just talking about that with my wife the other day. There's a ceasefire in the Middle East. And what happens? 2 bombs go off outside our house. lovely. You just don't know what crap life will bring, you know. But again, you can tell I'm from Northern Ireland, can't you? You see, we tend not to be. We've had a shooting in our house and two bombs now in the last year, and you can tell we're not that bothered by it. It's just that's that, you know. I still think it's interesting that even though the bombs exploded, that the media still calls them suspicious devices. You know, life's life. People are people. But yeah, was it this? Was it? Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. That kind of thing. Oh, da-dun, 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 da. But yeah, you got to try and look at the bright side, don't you? I've often thought about the simulation hypothesis, and I don't buy it myself. I never have, to be honest with you. Let's see. It does. We've been doing history, the same stuff all across our history, at least the one we really recall. The beautiful youths, Cynthia is saying, are the ones that remember the words of Muad'Dib regarding the long life of the Imperium. Notice that Stilgar begins to get into the mind of these youths outside his own mind. Yeah, and again, it's like, isn't it? You can dream of a long life outside in the Imperium, possibly. The little thing that I think it's interesting about that chapter is it really suggests that people think they can move around in the Imperium, but really they can't. And again, ultimate serfdom, isn't that how it's put? Something like that. Pardon me, where's that word serfdom? I should use my notes. Shouldn't it be a lot easier? Pardon me, to find. Know exactly where it is in my notes. That's why I do it. Yeah, testing place for these policies, which hope to implement in the rest of the empire. What was the bit about serfdom? Bear with me. That's funny, isn't it? No, he's not finding it at all. Yeah, there it is. Is that it? No, hang on. I think I need new glasses. Yeah, planetary serfdom had reached its peak here on Arrakis. You know, serfdom, feudal system, if you like, 5 heroics. You know, again, if your father's a painter, you'll be a painter. This kind of thing. And I'd say it's not. Yeah, people just don't easily travel about. I think, you know. But yeah, I think that is it. It's and of course that we've got the youth of Leto as well. There's Cynthia as well. I think that's part of it as well. Especially the way Leto intercepts him there at the end, if you like. Christopher Christ says, I now understand why Leto subjected the Empire to 3,500 years of Fremen stagnation. And in some sense, Miles says, okay, hang on, sorry. Where do we go? Miles said, in some sense, we have not been able to get out of the pull of our genetics and our natural tendency to replicate the natural cycle we believe we understand from life in the universe. We dance, Julian saying, we dance to music we cannot hear. Just going on. Sorry, Miles. Sometimes I'll try and run these together. In some sense, we have not been able to get out of the pull of our genetics and our natural tendency to replicate the natural cycle we believe we understand from life in the universe. But the real matrix is not because we live in a simulation. Rather, we need to create a simulation of reality in our brains in order to navigate the world. Living organisms have their senses turned to their need through a bloody long process of evolution and selection. We can only see part of the visual spectrum because we see what's important to evolve. Miles is saying, good call, Julian. At the end, it's just the interface created by evolution, or I might say required or more bold, a pre-requirement. People have called it Maya, collective dream, the mirror, and so on. I'm just going to run back up quickly. That was just to run through Miles's comments because they were interspaced there. And Julian was saying, we dance to music we cannot hear. Mentats would call that matrix a screen. Navigators call it a pathway. Benny Gesserit say it as a chain. I put overlays on things, mental overlays on in my imagination. I do it. I've done it quite a lot, most of my life. It's a visual thing for me. I don't know. In fact, sorry, folks, I'm going to have to run to the loo very quickly. But I was wondering if any of you had seen that chip implant that is it the Elon Musk one, and the chap that's disabled and he's playing the first-person shooter games and he's able to target everyone before they can react. That's kind of interesting. Give me 1 wee second, folks. I do apologize. I'm bursting here. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, folks. Apologies. I was just trying to catch up with these wee comments here. There's an interesting little conversation going here. Yeah, overlays. Yeah, I would do that. That's just a visual thing in my mind. I don't know why I do it, actually, to be honest with you. I'm kind of wondering where I picked it up from. Interesting. Living organisms. Yeah, let's see. Yes, Miles is saying, good call, Julian, at the end. It's just the interface. Yeah, created by evolution, or I might say require, or more bold, a pre-requirement. People have called it Maya, collective dream, the mirror, and so on. Exactly. I call it an overlay, just that's what I put an overlay on things. Julian saying, the golden path is humanity being brutally, selectively bred to be more sensitive to the natural cycle, the present, new, surprising, transitory, and variety-filled infinite. That's a good way of putting it, Julian. Miles is saying, the thing is that the goal is not to exit the matrix. That is just plain stupid. You can't exist outside it. What we can do is improve it. It's more like a custom VR headset to which we can add apps. Miles saying, exactly, we need to continue evolving. That's why stagnation kills us, either at the gene level, individual, or population. The individual, family, society at large. The way it's being put in the chapter, isn't it? When we get stuck in life, that's basically the system not being able to evolve, and it creates frustration. Julian saying, children is also the start of a new cycle. Frank, as a writer, has to get away from Paul and enter a new era. Yeah, it's often I've always said that you can look at the Dune series as two trilogies, but I actually think of them as three duologies that overlap, and that there should have been really, if you think about it, the God Emperor to me would be the bridging book of the whole lot. if there was to be one more Dune novel to be finished, you know. So Miles is saying, so if pain and struggle is obligatory and needed for life, we should use this knowledge to improve ourselves, understanding that it'll require sweat and tears, but that is the real way for happiness. I know there's something quite messed up about that, though, isn't there, Miles? Hello, sausage. Sorry, I'm being barked at here. Hello. You okay? Oh, sorry, Wendy's. Somebody's sorting around there. Um, it's one of those things that what do you sort of say? My wife would sort of agree that bad things that happen to you make you a better person, and you do not. It's not a thing that you want to say. Um, it's not a thing that you want to point out to your kids when you raise them. You know that stuff will happen to you. It'll not be nice, but it tends to make you stronger. You know, better, that kind of thing. Not don't mean in the Nietzschean way, but but I suppose, you know. I tend to think of that which does not kill us just didn't kill us. That's all. If you see what I mean. But yes, indeed, it's an interesting old life, isn't it? And the things that make us who we are. And would we better? Would we be better off as innocents and this kind of thing? You know, I don't know. I used to be such a happy-go-lucky, easygoing chap. You know, really, really just that sort of person. You know, and nowadays I'm not like that at all. I mean, I try to be, but I'm very cynical. I'm very very dark in my thoughts. You know, but I try. I just have a very dark sense of humor. But I just know too much nasty things, bad things. You know, too much about human nature, and at the same time, the flip side of it's always there. You know, Julian saying Frank believes hard times make for mental muscle. It makes sense for someone who grew up in the wilderness during the depression with alcoholic parents. He had to rely on himself. Oh, I totally agree. Um, you know, it is the things that you know, your life. It's again life and your life and your environment, all sorts of things, nature and nurture inform who you are. You know, um, and it is interesting sometimes. I think I don't know the things that life throws at you tend to be a bit. You know, it's the things that you don't see coming. I think that are, you know, more interesting. You know, but it's some very very good points there. I think what where was it? There's a very good point there. Miles made when we get stuck in life. And that's basically the system not being able to evolve and it creates frustration. I still think there's something about, as much as Frank talks about systemic thinking and all of that, I think human beings are very much hardwired for systems that we create. You know, again, as we could put it there, as some kind of overlay or network or interface, you know, with which to kind of interact with the universe, if you like. It's good. Do you know something? For this, we've been on here for what now, 2.5 hours. This is one of the shorter chapters, and we've got more chat. And this is what I find tends to be very interesting about Frank, is that we tend to talk more about these short little things where the big ideas are, and we're really trying to look at, I suppose, within this, Leto's really trying to point out that the Fremen are, I think, ultimately that the Fremen are no longer looking inward, that they've managed to free themselves in a way because of Muad'Dib. Muad'Dib changed all that, that they don't have to be this inward, insular people that they have been to survive. They can now look outward. You know, they can open their windows, they can wear nice clothes that make them look good. You know, it's again, at some fundamental level, you've got to ask, what's wrong with that? You know, Holly. Sorry about that, folks. Our doggies are barking and so on. But yes, indeed, hard times develop mental muscle. You know, as I said, it's an interesting thing. I've been thinking about that this week, just with what's happened here, and different generation. You know, how do you sort of old cynics, you know, sort of old hardened cynics like myself, how do we explain this crap to the new generation? You know, and the fact that they're not involved in all of this crap is what we like about them. Does that make sense? Um, you know, a lot of the kids in Northern Ireland are growing up without having. And to just sadly, it depends on where they live. Others are it'll be a big part of their lives forever. They'll grow up in a terrorist-controlled state, and their lives will be controlled by those people. Whether the government cares or not doesn't really matter. It's just the way it would be. But yes, indeed, life throws difficult things at us. I suppose sometimes it's about how you deal with them. Um, and more often than not, when there's been hard situations for me in life, I've often witnessed and watched other people run. Um, which is, and I mean all sorts of strange situations, but where people should have stood and helped, or this kind of thing, people tend to run. Is my own observation for whatever. I don't, unfortunately. It means I tend to deal with that. I tend to observe things, so I don't tend to run. But I don't run from problems or troubles, if you see what I mean. What was it Shakespeare says? Whenever troubles come, they come not in single spies, but in battalions. you know. Sometimes they come in single spies as well. But yes, indeed, I'm agreeing very much what Julian's saying there is that hard times make for mental muscle. It's almost a message that runs through all six Dune novels. Especially when we think about things are um, the aspect of provocation or sheer peril that's required, if you like, to create a Kwisatz Haderach. But there we go. Well, listen, folks, time for me to wrap up. I'm afraid I'm a bit pooped. But it's been a good one this week. We're making real progress. Chapter 19 will be back on next week. As always, it's a regular thing now, by the way, so we're not be missing programs. And hopefully the weather's been a bit kinder to us tonight, and we don't have um, as many kind of little cackles and stuff on the sound and stuff. But we'll be back next week with chapter 19. We're working on a bunch of stuff at the minute for you. Say no more than that. I keep making promises. Talk about one's own limitations and understanding them. The amount of stuff that I'm trying to do. And that's an interesting thing. Sometimes you have to go know one thing at a time. You can read 6 books at once if you like, but sometimes it's good to put 5 of them down and focus on one. But hopefully we'll have a wee bit of something for you quite soon, heading up towards Christmas if we can get the time. And we have a bit of time at the minute, and hopefully we'll get some correspondence sorted out on maybe a night or two with a few of you, which I'm really looking forward to. So hopefully life's being a bit kinder to us over the next few weeks. But listen, folks, I shall say goodnight. And there's something saying thanks, Doc. Thanks. Well, no, thank you, everybody. The quality of the chat and the conversation and the questions and the comments tonight has been fantastic. As always, someone like me, when you do this kind of thing, you feed on your audience. If you understand, it's the same as being a musician on stage. So as always, thank you guys. Take it easy, look after yourselves wherever you are, and we'll see you real soon, hopefully. All the best now, folks. Good night. Bye-bye.